For the smart and free thinking, welcome to Black Market Reads with your host, Lissa Jones.
Welcome to Black Market Reads. I'm Lissa Jones, and today we're recording live at Franconia Sculpture Park near Taylor's Falls, Minnesota, in front of an audience and in the presence of a work of art that is asking all of us some difficult questions. So whether you're here with us in the room or listening later, I want to invite you to imagine. Just outside, there are 3 bronze figures, identical, seated on the ground, arranged in a circle around a target pressed into black sand. The piece is called Are You Down? The artist is Michael Richards. Today's conversation is about his work, his life, and his legacy, and about what it means to tell the story of an artist who can no longer speak for himself, except through the work he left behind. Stay with us.
For Black writers and all their readers, and for audiences who are smart and free thinking, Black Market Reads is a series of conversations highlighting the Black literary voices of today. Black Market Reads is produced by the Givens Foundation for African American Literature in partnership with iDream.tv.
We're in for a very exciting conversation. Today, I'm joined by 3 phenomenal people. Esther Callahan is a curator whose work centers Black artists and Black cultural narratives, and she's a returning guest to Black Market Reads. Welcome, Esther, or welcome back.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Alex Fialho and Melissa Levin are curators and editors of the book Michael Richards, Are You Down? A collection of essays and stunning photographs that bring together voices reflecting on Richards' life and work. Alex and Melissa, welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm so excited. Please, if you would be so kind, will you help me welcome them? And I would be remiss not to thank you, because if there weren't any audience, no one would be here to listen. So thank you very much for coming. Before we begin, I want to name where we are, not just physically, but historically and emotionally. We're talking about an artist whose work engages race, history, and the Black body, and whose life was cut short on September 11th, 2001. So this conversation may raise as many questions as it answers, and that's intentional. We're going to begin by hearing from Michael Richards himself. This is his artist statement, read today by Don Dale, Michael's cousin and the caretaker and steward of his art. Don, would you please join us?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. Michael Richards' artist statement. Does the glass ceiling, which excludes, also reflect the desire to belong? My current body of work investigates the tension between assimilation and exclusion. By focusing on issues of identity and identification, I attempt to examine the feelings of doubt and discomfort which face Blacks who wish to succeed in a system which is structured to deny them access. How do systems of representation and the portrayal of success both seduce and repel? I wish primarily to give voice to the psychic spaces in which exists both hope and frustration, faith and failure, and the compromises which must be negotiated in order to survive. Though the issues which inform the work may seem as primarily political, I use a language of metaphor to express them. The use of feathers and tar, mirrors and ladders, the concept of flight, both as freedom and surrender, all attempt to open a metaphorical space into which the viewer can be seduced. This space allows for an examination of the psychic conflict which results from the desire to both belong to and resist the society which denies Blackness even as it affirms. In attempting to make this pain and alienation concrete, I use my body, the primary locus of experience, as a die from which to make casts. These function as surrogates and as an entry into the work.
That was a beautiful reading by Dawn Dale, Michael's cousin and the caretaker and steward of his art. Michael Richards was a Jamaican-American artist, deeply engaged with history, race, and the body, especially the Black male body, in relation to power, flight, and vulnerability. He often worked with the image of the Tuskegee Airmen, Black pilots who trained to fly for a country that did not fully recognize their humanity. James Baldwin would say, "How do you pledge allegiance to a flag which has never even considered you?" Here at Franconia, during a residency in 2000, Richards created a version of this piece in resin. 3 identical figures, modeled after himself, dressed as Tuskegee Airmen. They sit around a target, but none of them are hitting it. Esther Callahan, let's start with you. When you first encountered Michael Richards' work, what did you feel, Esther, before you understood anything about it?
I think the first feeling I had was reverence for a story that is not Minnesota-centered, a story that is a part of American history, but not necessarily the one that, as a Minnesotan, would encounter on a daily basis in a rural space. So for me, that encounter was one that was like, I have a moment to sit back and think about not only the artist, the content, but also the conversation that his work and the legacy that he is presenting gets to live and thrive in a rural space where generally in Minnesota, Black history centers in urban spaces. So having something in a rural space shifts the context of what permanence and importance American history is for any and all in every and all spaces.
Thank you, Esther. Alex and Melissa, what is the work doing?
Thank you so much for engaging Michael's work and legacy in this conversation. We're honored to be here in Minnesota. Michael Richards made work primarily in the 1990s and is often engaging, as we've discussed, flight, aviation. Are You Down specifically is one of the later works from 2000, and it's in a moment where Michael Richards was creating full-scale bodily figures. And as the artist statement that we heard Dawn Dale read, his practice is trying to think through these questions of alienation and pain, but also power and flight and possibility. So he talks about a kind of double-edged sword. And in terms of the Tuskegee Airmen specifically, he often was referencing them as a way to think through, as you noted, the kind of complicated histories of American democracy and freedom. These figures were fighting many missions in the name of democracy, but were also having to eat in segregated barracks and after they flew their mission. So Richards was talking about these complications, these contradictions, and as you note, the figures have maybe missed the target or they have tattered uniforms. So there's some possibility, but also some pain in the kind of fallen figures that we're seeing.
Thank you. Melissa.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would also point to Michael's conversation with monuments and monumentality in reference to not only this work, but others. Also, there's another work called Great Black Airmen Tuskegee, which is, of course, also engaging the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen, as well as the Tuskegee syphilis experiments, which he also refers to painfully. And I think with this work and this conversation about monuments that also feels incredibly contemporary. He made this work, Great Black Airmen Tuskegee, in 1996, and then he made Are You Down, as Alex said, between 1999 and 2000. Are You Down is, 3 downed pilots, military figures, when we think about monuments that may be typically, raised on pedestals, typically of, white men celebrating a victory or a supposed victory, that Michael is really taking this idea of the monument and kind of flipping it and changing the way that we engage with these histories and with monumentality and memorialization.
Can we also lean into the colloquial nature of the term "are you down" and that importance of like the significance of having layered meaning in a title of work, which is, titling a piece of artwork is extremely hard. There's probably a billion untitled pieces because of it. But Michael had such a poignancy in his language on how he's framing something through his title. And if we're thinking about Black culture, Black colloquial language, and we're thinking of "are you down," we're leaning into a whole nother context that is an invitation to not only be a part of and witness of, but also an invitation to him and his background and his culture and the way that he might, use these words in everyday language of just like, come with me, are you down?
That's beautiful. All of you just gave beautiful perspective. It's Black vernacular. Are you down? Right? That's bad. It can be that's really bad or that's really bad. Right? And so that's another way that he's engaging in African American language and culture. That's a beautiful, beautiful description. The Tuskegee Airmen, they're not flying. They're grounded. What do you think about that? Anybody can pick it up.
Well, just picking up what on the title, they're also just, Michael was so beautifully iterative and poetic in the titles that just that idea of "are you down" also refers directly, more literally, to the pilots. They are down. And Edwidge Danticott, in her beautiful essay that's in the monograph, Michael Richards' "Are You Down?" she reflects that maybe it's a phrase that the pilots would have been saying to each other, "Are you down?" as they were potentially descending.
It's so profound to me to read a book or to experience a monograph and then sit with the people because it makes the whole thing real and it makes it come alive. Or what does the groundedness mean to you, Esther?
It's a really powerful question. And I think it has, again, layers because that's what Michael's work does. And I think it invites you to be a part of that. For me, as a African-American woman in Minnesota, seeing his work and wondering, would I be down to actually put on a uniform, go in flight, and do this for my country in the turbulent times that we're sitting in now, has a completely different meaning for me. Would I even be allowed to as a woman? Would I be seen? Would I, our separate barracks, the way that we're going again? And what does that mean in the sort of expanding meaning of racial injustice in the United States? So them being on the ground, in some ways, the best part about the sculpture, and well, there's so many, but one of the best is that in order to really interact with the work, you have to yourself get down on the ground, to be face to face with what he's inviting you into. You don't get to walk away or walk around without yourself being grounded. So again, the conversation, the layers that Michael brings to the table in all of his work is profound.
Thank you, Esther. Alex, you are deeply steeped, PhD and all, in African American history, right? So talk to us about this idea of groundedness, the Tuskegee Airmen. Contemporize it for us. What's happening here?
Yeah, thank you for the question. In thinking about the range of Richard's practice, some of the sculptures are like Tar Baby versus St. Sebastian, which is another landmark work, raised. It's a Tuskegee Airman figure, planes piercing the torso, and it's raised on a platform. So there's this kind of feeling of ascension that's part of the practice. And in counterpoint, Are You Down, as we've been discussing, is a grounded piece. So again, there's these kind of dualities as part of the work, thinking about both possibility and pitfall. it's been a powerful work to be with, and were particularly meaningful to bring the sculpture into the exhibition, which was also called Are You Down? The Traveling Retrospective, which originated at the Museum of Contemporary Art, North Miami. We'd be remiss not to say the MoCA, North Miami, and the Center for Art Research and Alliances in New York City are the co-publishers of the book. And it was the first time that we were able to bring these works together in one exhibition, and we were able to restore the pieces from Franconia and show them in a gallery setting again, which is an incredibly meaningful opportunity as well. So to get back to the question about groundedness, really when you're with the range of work, you can really get a sense of both this groundedness in this Are You Down sculpture, but also the ways that Richards is thinking about ascent and possibility at the same time with other pieces.
Thank you. It inspires me to think about W.E.B. Du Bois and double consciousness, the way if you are Black in this country, you have to see it two ways. People are getting more hip, kind of. But that's very meaningful to me, too. Let's take a moment. Let's hear from Michael himself.
A lot of my work deals with issues of immigration, assimilation, Black culture, and attraction, repulsion to sort of larger society. And I've been traveling since I was a child. I grew up in Jamaica in the West Indies. And planes have always been a big part of my life. Pilots in my work function as a symbol of, they're almost images of transcendence. They're these beings that go up into the sky, the offer of freedom, of escape, of, coming to a new land, of the yellow brick road and success and all of that. But you always come back down to the ground, It's always, maybe I'm Catholic, so maybe it's a little too religious, but it's, always this descent, from the high points back down to the ground, and always a struggle of trying to transcend, to be high again.
Thank you. That was Michael in his own words. Still traveling, still in motion. Let's talk about history in tension. There is the contradiction, the Tuskegee Airmen representing achievement, but also segregation, trying to be great to ascend and constantly being pushed to descend and trying to ascend again. Talk to me about that.
It's funny I think when I read the monograph, one of the things that really struck me was how much religion was deeply a part of a lot of his work, and thoughts on ascension and Jesus. Are you down? Even like how many times have we heard in gospel music or in church music, when I am down and I'm lost and weary, how we have to find our way through that relationship. And without him saying, and it's like, say something without saying something. He was saying something without saying something through his work by being able to say that. Like, he had a relationship with God that didn't have to be very present, but was very much a part of the work. And so in some ways, I think, where he was on the 92nd floor and his work was in ascension in the sky while he was doing this work, and then a bunch of it is lost and now on the ground. There's I feel like there's like a prayer that's happening when I see his work. And I'm, not an extremely religious person in any way. So for me to get that from his work and then, read more about some of these connections, but having felt it already, says to me again the importance of his work and what he's trying to say to the world, and why we need to continue to have conversations about that, about our feelings, our relationships to it, and what are our connections, and how do we encounter ascension and being grounded at the same time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I think that, something that's so singular about Michael's work and thinking and practice is the way that, as we talk about also in the book, the way that he brings references together, or his perspectives or pieces of his world and life. So like you're saying, religion, the Tuskegee Airmen, historical and religious narratives, humor also, and all of these things, coming together in this way that could, only he could do with his unique perspective and voice. So I think of a work in terms of thinking about that uplift and downfall, and where religion may meet, something like aviation. Feels like there's a work called Climbing Jacob's Ladder. And so the reference to Jacob and the angels, but in Michael's work, there are so many references. One, the kind of physical, visual work itself may refer to Donald Judd, minimalism in art history, and at the same time referring to the story of Jacob and the angels. But in the work itself, there's a target at the bottom again, just like in Are You Down? And there are heads, disembodied heads strewn around this target. There are disembodied feet climbing the ladder. So he's really, telling us this story from a very particular vantage point and really showing us the possibility and the pitfall.
Thank you.
I'll add, in the publication, there's a range of works by contemporary artists, and David Hammonds and Lorna Simpson were thinking about hair in their work. So we've used images to illustrate Michael Richards' engagement with hair. Or there's photographs by Renee Cox and Lyle Ashton Harris, amazing photographers who were friends with Michael Richards, who photographed him. He was definitely in artistic community in many ways. He cast Renee Cox when she was pregnant for a sculpture called Yo Mama that she showed in her own work. So he was collaborative, knew Dred Scott very well, William Cordova, a range of other artists. So it was definitely a big part of 1990s community in New York and beyond. And just a bit more context, the video that we saw of Michael Richards speaking in his studio was in his studio at Art Center South Florida in Miami, which was the program that Richards did with Keith and Carolyn. And in that studio, you can actually see Are You Down, the figure being created. So that's where he made the work in Miami, showed it in DC at the Corcoran indoors, then brought it to Franconia, which was his largest piece. So it was an incredible opportunity for him to take that indoor sculpture, the three figures, and expand it, make it into a circle with a target in the center. And then, tragically, Richards passed in 2001, a year or so after he created the work out here. And Franconia had the work outdoors for 12 years. Incredibly grateful that they continued to show their practice after Richard's passing. But it was fiberglass and resin, so it was starting to melt in the Minnesota sun. And so very meaningfully, as we heard at the beginning, Franconia did a restoration project and have now been able to cast the piece. We spoke with Tamsy Ringler, who was involved in that process, and now the work has been recast in bronze since 2012 and is sited right at the central kind of entrance to the space. So it's been a journey. I mean, the piece has been in Minnesota for 26 years now, it seems like. So it's really an honor, and we're deeply grateful for all these parts that have made this piece sited here.
Let's talk about the title, Are You Down? You could have chosen a title from any one of his works. Why did you choose that one, you two?
Yeah, it's really meaningful to be sitting here in 2026. The retrospective has traveled from the Museum of Contemporary Art in North Miami to the North Carolina Museum of Art in Raleigh, North Carolina, to the Bronx Museum. And we first visited Franconia Sculpture Park in 2019, before the retrospective had been completed, and we were taking a pilgrimage in some ways to see the work. And at that point, we're still naming it. And we often want to center Michael's voice in the project of curating and stewarding his legacy. So our titles have come from works from his practice. And so we saw this piece. It was an incredibly powerful work. I remember being in the car riding either in Miami or in Minnesota and saying to ourselves, Are You Down is going to be the title of the show. As we've noted, it has this kind of question to audiences, and it really opens out to prompt and provoke and to ask people, what are they willing to sacrifice? With whom are they willing to be in solidarity and community? And it felt like a really powerful, encompassing concept to frame Richard's practice.
It seems very perfect. Thank you. This book is one of the most comprehensive documentations of Michael Richards' work. Who is Michael Richards? And why was it important to the two of you to take it on?
Well, thank you for that question. Michael was born in 1963 in Brooklyn. He was then raised in Kingston, Jamaica. His parents, Fred and Mary, brought him back to Jamaica for his upbringing, where he went to elementary school and high school. And he came back to New York City to go to college. He went to Queens College to pursue a degree in art. He then went on to NYU and received a master's in art, and he really immediately deeply engaged in the art world or in his art communities in New York City. He really intentionally pursued his practice through residencies, artist residencies, grants, fellowships, like those at Franconia that were offered, which is how Are You Down came to be here at Franconia, was through one of those fellowships. And one of the last residency that he participated in was at Lower Manhattan Cultural Council, LMCC, and it was called Worldviews, and it was in the World Trade Center, and it had been running from 1997 until, sadly, September 11th, 2001. And he was the only artist in the studios that morning at that time, and sadly passed on that day. And his work was, as we now know, so incredibly powerful, prescient in so many ways. And I worked at Lower Manhattan Cultural Council for 12 years, starting in 2005 until 2017. And Alex and I had curated shows together at the organization for a few years and had the idea to just look into Michael's life and work and try to understand more about him as an artist. And as we started to get to know a little bit more about him as an artist, Dawn, his cousin, who we heard from, was our first phone call. And we were really encouraged by his friends and family to also get to know him as a person. And so it really felt like we hope, in the exhibition, the retrospective, and in the monograph, that what really comes through is a portrait, a polyvocal, multi-perspectival portrait of an artist and a person.
And I'll add, Melissa and I identify as two white curators stewarding the legacy of Black artists, and it's been really important to our ethic and our approach to center Michael Richards' voice. So you open the book, and the first text you see is the artist statement. And also it's really central to our practice to involve Black collaborators and to engage Richards' diverse communities from his lifetime. So Edwidge Danticat, incredible Haitian author, is the lead essay in the text. Then Franklin Sermons, who is the director of the Perez Art Museum, Miami, is the second text. He knew Michael Richards in his lifetime, so has a really beautiful reflection on their time together in the 1990s art world. And then we have a chorus of voices from 15 to 20 people who knew Richards in his lifetime, reflecting on him. And in addition to all the artistic accolades, Richards was deeply beloved. In these chorus of voice reflections, at least about a half talk about Richards' beautiful smile and his sense of humor and his commitment to his practice. And Dawn Dale, Michael Richards' cousin, shares in the monograph a text of her own reflecting on her work stewarding and caretaking for Richards' practice for decades since his passing. So it really is, as Melissa said, a real chorus of voices or a range of perspectives in the publication.
Thank you.
I'll just add that, of course, the work, once we started to get to know the work, just to get to how this became, went from being an idea to create an exhibition to a 10-year ongoing legacy stewardship project resulting in a retrospective and a monograph, is that the work itself is so powerful, formally and conceptually. We were immediately drawn in, and then drawn in a deep way, obviously, through all of this time. And so the work felt so timely, so of its time in the 1990s, but also so timely in 2016, which is when we first came to the work. The work about race, police brutality, monumentality just couldn't have felt more urgent and pressing, and his voice contributing in that moment felt also just incredibly powerful.
Thank you. You're nodding, Esther. Do you have anything you want to contribute?
I want this to go past, like, we're listening to what we're talking about Are You Down? We're talking about this sculpture at Franconia, but I really, really want people to lean into the depth and breadth of his work, that there is so much more to talk about. There's so much more to investigate. There's so much more to write about, to present. And when you get an opportunity to look at the monograph, you get an opportunity to see a number of ways, like you were saying, Melissa, like how police brutality was present. There's so many contexts. Like he has an entire series called The Escape Plan. And honestly, if you get a chance and you maybe don't have a chance to look at the monograph, please just look that up, because right now there are people that are asking these same questions. So 25 years since he's passed, we're still asking these same questions of what is our escape plan for the ways that we exist in the world, either in community or with our government. And so, like, again, just talking about, like, how can you have somebody who is literally thinking about the future? When we're talking about Afrofuturism, Michael Richards is the embodiment of that term, right? So if we could sit and talk about Are You Down for a really long time and break down so many layered components, but it's also really important. And again, that invitation, he's inviting you to be a part of so many contexts and moments that are still prescient now.
Add something and to echo both of Melissa and Esther. The question of police brutality is a central engagement in one work called A Loss of Faith Brings Vertigo that Richards made in 1994, thinking with the police brutality of the Los Angeles Police Department on Rodney King. And it's a sculpture, busts of Richards' face with images of white police officers, often in confrontational poses, photo transferred onto Richards' face with a central bust that has Rodney King's image, and it rotates slowly and says, "A loss of faith brings vertigo," thinking about this disillusion of ideas of safety and in relation to police. And when we showed that work for the first time in the exhibition in 2016, in thinking about a Minnesota context, Alton Sterling and Philando Castile had just been murdered by police. And so that work had a really powerful resonance. And even a New York Times piece wrote Michael Richards' practice, revisiting Michael Richards' practice in the age of Black Lives Matter. Then the retrospective opened in 2021, a year after George Floyd. And so these kind of cyclical returns that Richards so presciently embedded in his practice continue to speak to our contemporary moment. And we're deeply grateful to be able to bring the work back to the fore at this time.
Thank you. It's always hard for me. I'm from Minnesota, and I know Philando's mother, and Dante Wright's mother, and too many mothers. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you, Michael Richards. A reading. Feathers, mirrors, pilots, barbed wire, tar, a chariot, ladders, airplanes, targets, neon lights, heads, hair, helmets, hands, arms, nipples, a phallus, a winged torso, Icarus, Sisyphus, Tuskegee, sound systems, dance hall, reggae, hip hop, hymns, spirituals, Saint Sebastian, Jacob Elijah, the jazz singer, minstrelsy, blackface, Burt Williams, Ngizi Ngondi, monuments, minimalism, lowriders, a lottery ticket, trophies, Parliament Funkadelic, Boris Gardner, Wings and Things, Tar Baby, Brer Rabbit, Rodney King, Black Beauty Sand. Resin, bronze, marble dust, Jamaica, New York, Miami, the Middle Passage, the African diaspora, anti-Blackness, Blackness. What do you think Michael Richards is asking of us through his work?
That's a beautiful question. What do I think he's asking of us? What do we think he's asking of us? I mean, even just this title of a question, "Are you down?" feels like, him posing a question, inviting us in, also inviting just conversation, dialogue. There's not just one answer. I think that the way that, I, or maybe we, but I'll, can speak for myself, just engaged with the work in an iterative way. So I often think about it's like a prism. Every time we look at the work, there's something new to receive. There's something new to perceive visually, conceptually. And so I guess in a broad way, I think he's asking for deep engagement. I also always like to think about the humor. So I think he's also offering and asking us to, take very seriously the work and the issues that he's addressing, but to also see those moments where there's playfulness and where there's humor and how important that is in also delivering a message.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add to the incantation, we call it, which is the text that you read so beautifully. It means a lot to hear it in your voice. Thank you so much. Starts our essay. And we were thinking about the range of references and contexts and ideas, and we made a list and started to think of it as a kind of opening or incantation to Richard's practice. So, but what you can get a sense of from that really wide-ranging list is that Richards wanted us to think about these ideas of spirituality, diaspora, flight, blackness in dialogue with each other. It's kind of a remixing and referencing. There's a piece called Swing Low, which is referencing Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, and also lowrider car culture. So it's a chariot with a blue neon underglow, and it plays music. And it's what does it mean to think through a kind of daily practice of driving, of lowrider cars alongside an African-American spiritual? And so Richards is really interested in these kind of tensions and what comes from bringing things together that we might not think about. There's a drawing called Icarus Wings and Things, and it's chicken wings drawn deftly, but what does it mean to think about wings and things? And it's the subtitle says, "We deliver," a delivery of wings and things, but have it be Icarus wings, and the kind of hubris and story and Greek myth of Icarus. So he's always thinking on multiple registers and challenging us to think with him in those ways.
I think it's interesting too, if you think about the space that we're in, right? He creatively never stepped outside of, this is what I'm going to make because of the space I'm in. He instead, I think, brought American history, Black history into every space that he went in, regardless, because it deserved to be present and it mattered. And so I think, not having met him, not having spent, the last decade as Melissa and Alex have, really deeply in his work, both tangentially and spiritually and historical context. I think, he really wanted to, in this case, in this reference to Franconia, he expanded the meaning of place. And that's something that's like absolutely beyond important to me, because it ensures that rural spaces are seen as a site of cultural depth, of historical reckoning, and creative possibility. And the fact that I get to be a Minnesotan in a space that has a Michael Richards that I can bring people to, it's really emotional. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I waited to watch the video of Michael speaking, and hearing his voice and having him be present here 25 years later is such a powerful thing. And I'm just so grateful to be here with all of you, to be able to be in this moment and to really reflect on the importance of these artists that so often are erased. And I just really want to say thank you for this, for all of it.
Esther is the knitting that brought all of this together. And I don't want it to be unnoticed or unnamed that Dawn carries a very unique and heavy burden. I don't know if anybody ever asked you or if you just picked it up, but I know as a Black woman what it means to carry. And I want to say thank you. We're here because of you. I also want to take a moment to shout out Alex and the team here at Franconia. Not only are they some of the most welcoming and kind people with the most gorgeous smiles that light up this whole place, but everything about this says welcome. And it takes a lot of courage to be in the state of Minnesota, or really anywhere else in the world, to present a work like this, to make it the only permanent piece in the entire collection, that it might last, according to Alex, another 6,000 years. With honor to Michael Richards, may that be so.
Michael Richards was a person that had value, that is continuing to create value through what he has left behind. Thank you to Franconia for seeing the value of Michael Richards' work and honoring it in a way that will keep it prescient for the rest of our time on this earthly plane. Thank you to Black Market Reads, to Lissa, for being here and for honoring this moment of inviting voices that aren't traditionally a part of this podcast, and seeing the value of centering this artist and the importance of keeping him alive through the archive of the Givens Foundation. I think that as we transition from this and we move to go and share space around his work, I want us to continue to ask that question, are you down? And what does that mean in the context of 2026 and our future? Thanks, everyone.
Michael Richards didn't get to finish the trajectory of his career, but this work remains grounded, repeating, asking something of us. Maybe the question isn't just, are you down? Maybe it is, are you paying attention? Are you willing to sit with what you don't fully understand? And are you willing to take responsibility for how stories, especially Black stories, are preserved and told? You can experience Are You Down here at this amazing place they call the Franconia Sculpture Park. And you can learn more in the monograph, Michael Richards, Are You Down? And in the Go Deeper section of our website at blackmarketreads.com. Thank you to Franconia Sculpture Park for hosting us, and to Don Dale, Esther Callahan, Melissa Levin, and wonderful Alex Fialho. I'm Lissa Jones. This is Black Market Reads, and we'll see you again next time.
For Black writers and all their readers, and for audiences who are smart and free thinking. Black Market Reads is a series of conversations highlighting the Black literary voices of today. Black Market Reads is produced by the Givens Foundation for African American Literature in partnership with iDream.tv.